Ben 10 is a series I absolutely adore. This video I'll be going over each episode of Season 1 one at a time to see if my love for the show is deserving or me just looking back at a series with rose-tinted glasses. Episode 1, Washington, BC. For whatever reason, my Netflix started with Washington, BC as episode 1, and then there were 10 as episode 2. Starting off the series with Heat Blast being this super cool composed hero saving this child from a burning building, only to have Ben's personality shine through when he gets a glimpse of a Sumo Slammers training card pack was fantastic. I have to say, if the series really had started this way, and I hadn't seen it before, I'd be hooked immediately. The intro is absolutely slamming. Off the bat, the art is immaculate, the voice acting work is just as good, especially Heat Blast's voice actor. We get introduced to Ben's first real villain, Dr. Animo, about to be evicted from his apartment. We see his first mutant frog. We get the team in this Walmart-style video store, only to be interrupted by Animo and his mutant frog. Ben manages to beat this giant hamster with a scooter. Animo escapes and we get some background on Animo's past. We cut to the Natural History Museum. Animo reanimates a mammoth. Ben goes forearms back when they weren't really too sure on what they wanted forearms to sound like, and he just sort of growls his way through the line delivery. 10-year-old Gwen beats the crap out of a giant canary. Animo reanimates a T-Rex. The gang faffs around a bit. As Stinkfly, Ben takes Animo's helmet, cancelling out the mutations, killing the T-Rex, I suppose. Animo's defeated and arrested. Ben takes Animo's chest piece as a bit of a trophy, and Gwen thanks him for saving her. I have to say, starting the series out with this rather strong episode, only to have them reveal the origin of the Omnitrix and all the background character stuff in the following episode absolutely would have worked. Episode 2, and then there were 10. We start off with Vilgax's ship shooting at the transport vessel holding the Omnitrix. We get our first glimpse at Vilgax before cutting to Ben being a menace at school. It's the last day of the school year, and we see Ben standing up to the local bullies JT and Cash, before getting hung up in a tree with the nerd he was trying to protect. Uncle Max picks him up to start the summer road trip. We're introduced to Gwen. This show does a great job at immediately showing the bickering dynamic between the two. Grandpa Max makes an interesting worm dish. We cut back to space where we see the transport vessel get destroyed right as it sends the Omnitrix down to Earth. Ben goes for a wander in the woods alone at night. He discovers the Omnitrix thinking it's a regular watch. It fuses to his arm. He stuffs around with it for a bit before transforming into Heat Blast. I said this with the Washington, BC episode, but Heat Blast has such a great voice. It sounds so cool and heroic but so childish simultaneously. Ben's a goof and ends up setting the forest alight. I find the character sheet pose for Heat Blast quite boring, but seeing him animated is a real treat. Gwen tries to kill Ben with a fire extinguisher before realising it's him. Anyway, the fire burns down, the park ranger looks pretty upset. We cut to space where we see Vilgax took some major damage in the space battle. Ben transforms back to human and confesses to Gwen his heroic intentions with the Omnitrix. We get an introduction to the Wildmutt transformation and see what he can do. He ends up destroying Vilgax's drone. We get introduced to Diamond Head and we get this showdown between this enormous robot that Ben cuts in half by deflecting its laser back against itself. We get a pre-credits scene showing off Accelerate and then we get back to the road. This episode makes me question Netflix's intention with showing this as the second episode of the series. I thought swapping the episodes around and having Jurassic BC as an introduction to the world gives you a real glimpse into the world and how everything takes place, and then jumping back into the origin as a secondary episode would work, but it just sort of feels rather clunky in that order. Episode 3, The Krakken. Ben and Gwen are once again alone in the forest at night, this time in a lake. Ben turns into forms looking a lot like Marvel's Man-Thing. He gets attacked by a large shadowy figure and almost drowns. Anyway, he lives and goes to tell Grandpa Max, who doesn't quite believe him. They go fishing before bumping into some environmental scientists. We're introduced to this super Jaws-esque jaded fisherman who seems more bothered by the scientists and only mildly fazed by the Krakken's existence. The Kraken attacks the dock and almost kills Gwen. Ben kicks the Kraken in the jaw a few hundred times before the Kraken steals a crate from the scientists. It's revealed that the scientists who are clearly evil are evil and are trying to steal the Kraken's eggs. We're introduced to Ripjaws, one of the most underrated original transformations. There's this great underwater sequence between Ripjaws, the poacher in a proto Iron Man armor, and the Kraken. Ben saves the day, convinces the Kraken not to kill the poacher, and then knocks him unconscious. Episode 4, Permanent Retirement. I remember really not enjoying this episode when I initially watched it in 2005. Anyway, solid start. We get an introduction to Upgrade. Ben seems pretty adept at using this transformation. I guess it's assumed he's been experimenting with the aliens at this point. We visit their Aunt Vera. We see the suspicious neighbour looking through the window. We get our first Ghost Freak transform, and he almost scares Gwen to death. We see the creepy old man from earlier, who is now a weirdly bendy, growling monster who chases Ben down. Aunt Vera gets covered up by goo at night before coming out of a room. Clearly quite odd now, like the creepy old man from before. She does this sort of gymnastics stunt when she sees some liquid spilt towards her feet. It's revealed the elderly people in this community being replaced by this goopy green alien, sort of invasion of the body snatchers type deal. Their real forms are revealed and we get a quick fight between them and Heat Blast before a sprinkler system gets them to give up on their invasion plans. Episode 5, Hunted. I did not remember this episode being in Season 1, this feels much later in the game. We start with these 3 bounty hunters doing an audition for Vilgax to show their worth. One in particular stands out, punches through the robot Ben took out in Episode 1 in a single hit. They're all hired by Vilgax and whoever collects the Omnitrix gets the reward. We see Ben training as Diamond Bolt, who looks reasonably competent before a bit of a blunder. The bounty hunters bicker a bit. The crab-looking bounty hunter fights Ghost Freak for a bit, forcing him to become tangible. Really demonstrates that these guys know what they're doing and they kind of know the expanded universe. They might have met these aliens before, and to Ben this is all such a new concept. They're attacked by the following Assassin 66 before Grandpa runs him over with his car. I did not remember the crab being such a standout character, but he's really pleasant. The crab and 66 team up, absolutely wiping the floor with Diamond Head before the third bounty hunter steps in and saves Ben. We find out this bounty hunter is a Tetraman named Tetrax, the same species as Diamond Head. He also turns out to be a good guy. We're introduced to Grey Matter, who takes out the crab. I guess he's totally robotic. I assumed he was a guy in a suit initially. Tetrax traps the other bounty hunters in a little cube and gives Ben a hoverboard and dips. Episode 6, Tourist Trap. Ben traumatizes a small child, a stingfly, before making a mess. They discover a trucker trapped inside his burning vehicle. Luckily, Ben's already transformed and saves him. As Stingfly, he rips through the truck's roof with his bare hands. I was not expecting Stingfly to be so physically strong. Did not remember that whatsoever. Grandpa Max takes him to Sparksville, a literal tourist trap filled with attractions like the world's biggest fishbowl and whatnot. The major attraction in the town is known as It. It ends up being an enormous rubber band ball. Ben messes around with it via his forearms with Gwen. This results in an alien made of electricity escaping from inside the rubber band ball, destroying the town. Ben ends up not being able to take it down as upgraded, gets frustrated and throws a manhole covering at it, cutting it in half, just rolling it and duplicating. They then multiply further. This ends up with a final fight between Heat Blast and the aliens, called Kilowatts, inside a solar system diorama mech body. Ben tricks them into entering the fishbowl, sealing the top with flames, and creates the town's newest attraction, a giant light bulb. Episode 7, Kevin 11. The family's staying at a hotel. Ben's denied an early access to the showing of the new Sumo Slammers game. He sneaks in as Ghost Freak before getting caught. Grandpa Max scolds Ben and bans him from comic books. It's nice to see this parental side of him. Ben runs off to the local arcade and ends up befriending a boy a year older than him, Kevin. Some street toughs corner Kevin, calling him a freak. It's revealed Kevin trashed their hideout. Ben turns into Accelerate and demolishes his 3 children before scaring off the 4th. It's revealed Kevin was born with his powers, his family's long gone, and he lives in an abandoned building. Kevin convinces Ben to come do crimes with him and steals the unreleased Sumo Slammers game. A SWAT team arrives with assault rifles and helicopters to protect the Sumo Slammers game and chases the two through the city. Kevin and Ben agree to be partners in crime. Kevin reveals he wants to crash a passenger train into a train full of money. Ben, taking issue with killing a train full of people, decides to stop him. Ben transforms into Heat Blast. Kevin absorbs a bit of Heat Blast and enters this really interesting looking partial transformation. Now partially transformed, Kevin goes to kill the street toughs from earlier. Kevin loses the transformation and lures Ben in to absorb some of forearms, gradually transforming over the course of the fight, telling Ben he'll take all of his powers. Kevin ends up tricking the Ben and absorbs the watch directly, ending up with him flying and transforming himself back into human. Ben and Grandpa make up. The end scene reveals Kevin still has some level of Ben's alien powers. Episode 8, The Alliance. We're introduced to this group with laser guns robbing an armoured truck, as Benner's forms, for the most part, demolishes them. The fight continues until one of Vilgax's drones comes in, knocking out Grandpa. The rest of the group leaves behind the leader of the gang, who ends up fusing with one of Vilgax's drones. This psychically links Vilgax to the group leader. He gets the newly enhanced leader to go off to the Omnitrix. Then Ben attempts to kill her by lighting a petrol truck on fire. We get a brief exchange between her and Accelerate before the final fight inside a gym where Ben turns into upgraded. Really clever way to deal with a partially robotic villain. Ben gets a glimpse of Vilgax and is terrified. After that, Ben jumps out of the gang leader before Gwen knocks her out with a bin lid. Episode 10, The Last Laugh. We get a cold open with Ripjaw stopping these 2 thugs and appear. I've noticed the classic series really has a habit of Ben totally overwhelming whoever he fights or being tossed around by them. The family ends up in a circus where we're introduced to the circus freaks, Thumbskull, Frightwig, and Acid Breath, who have the powers their names suggest. Ben gets a glimpse of this sinister monster clown before backing away afraid. It's revealed pretty quickly that Ben's terrified of clowns. While the clown Zombozo entertains the crowd, the freaks start robbing an ATM. Ben as Wildmart is tossing them around, not really having an issue with them before Zombozo comes out and Ben starts to cower in front of him. We find out that Zombozo is stealing people's spirits from them and using them as fuel. Ben goes to confront his fear and we get this super interesting funhouse House of Mirrors situation between him and Zombozo. Ben transforms into Ghost Freak, pulling his chest open, revealing this eldritch-like horror underneath Ghost Freak's skin, scaring Zombozo so much he explodes. Episode 10, Lucky Girl. We pick up at the museum where we're introduced to a magical spellbook. The tour group they're with and the family are sent up into the air as a sorcerer appears. Ben as Accelerate fights a sorcerer, knocking one of his artifacts off his outfit. The sorcerer ends up in the back of an ambulance. Gwen feels unappreciated by Ben after her helping out. Ben then gives her the artifact in response. It's quickly revealed the artifact grants luck to whoever wears it. The sorcerer comes back to life, taking the book from earlier. He needs the now missing artifact to use it fully. We get a scene of Gwen donning a cat costume and saving the day under the name Lucky Girl. While this is happening, Ben ends up being a big goof who gets himself stuck in a cement truck. We learn more about the charms. We get this amazing final fight in a graveyard between forearms and these gargoyles brought to life by the sorcerer Hex's magic. Gwen clocks him in the head with a rock, knocking him out before Grandpa Max picks up this enormous piece of cement using it as a bat. They take Hex's magical artifact and leave him in a stone coffin, only to later be found by the police. Gwen ends up breaking all the charms and releasing the magic. Episode 11, A Small Problem. I found this episode a real bore as a child. There's a lot of world building in it, but as a standalone piece of entertainment, it's a bit lackluster. We pick up with Ben and Gwen at a water park where Ben's too short to go on one of the slides. Ironically, he turns into his smallest alien, Grey Matter, before some random guy snatches up and takes him home. This guy is absolutely obsessed with aliens and wants to show proof to this mysterious organisation, the Forever Knights. Most of this episode is Ben being very little and very clever trying to escape this lunatic's house. The Forever Knights arrive at the house taking Ben with them. Grandpa Max and Gwen then sneak into the Forever Knights headquarters. The headquarters itself is fantastic. It feels really lived in. It feels like there's so much unexplained history of this place and there's so many artifacts that we just don't quite know about and it's all told through visuals. They blow up the headquarters and rescue this lunatic who now swears he was done with all alien dealings. We see the leader then looking at his laptop with all this information on Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max. Episode 12, Side Effects. This episode is a very strange second to last episode for a season. It's such an odd choice. The season goes along reasonably steady with ongoing plot before having this sort of 3-episode break. It's not quite filler because it's so much world building, but it doesn't really contribute to this ongoing Vilgax saga. It picks up in the city building being demolished. A bug mutant steps out and attacks the construction workers knocking down his home. Anyway, Ben is currently sick, which adds a layer of depth to this episode. We see Wildmutt is affected by the sickness. His eye gills are clogged from Ben's cold and he can't see at all now. The team investigates this abandoned building. We get to see a face-off between the bug mutant Clancy and a very under-the-weather forearms. We end up at this nuclear power plant where Ben transforms into a blue-flamed heat blast. The cold here results in heat blast flames freezing, not heating things up. He ends up freezing the reactor, preventing any meltdown. Clancy chases the family down in his bug armor before Ben lures all the bugs away from him. I really love the idea of this world just has mutants and cyborgs and intergalactic bounty hunters and all this mismatch of different genres. Episode 13, Secrets. We pick up with footage of Ben as Diamond Head apprehending 2 criminals being broadcast to Vilgax's ship. It's revealed that Vilgax is finally healed up and out of his tank. Ben wakes up from a nightmare, presumably about Vilgax. Grandpa starts acting funny when Ben mentions Vilgax to him, desperate to get to Mount Rushmore ASAP. On the way there, Vilgax lands at a nearby city, destroying it. Ben flies over his heat blast, going through drones with relative ease, really showing how much Ben has grown, how much more experienced he is at this point. Vilgax steps out of his landing pod. His first step causes this huge crunch in the ground. He's absolutely enormous. He's so imposing, completely unfazed by a barrage of attacks from heat blasts. He's tossing him through multiple buildings, jumping after him there in a matter of seconds. Ben melts the road, slowing Vilgax down a little bit, but only with just enough time to be rescued by Grandpa Max and Gwen. Vilgax chases after them, grabbing Ben by the Omnitrix, turning him back into his human form. Grandpa Max reveals he isn't a plumber like the trade, he's a plumber like the secret intergalactic group of space police. Vilgax states his plan to create an army of Omnitrix wielders to work under him in order to take over the universe. Max has a secret weapon to take out Vilgax. Max ends up crashing his van through Vilgax's ship, rescuing Ben from his restraints in the process. Ben tackles Vilgax out of the sky, getting absolutely demolished again. Vilgax amps up his strength and beats most all of Ben's transformations one at a time. Vilgax jumps back into his ship with Ben in hand. His ship about to self-destruct. Ben shoots Vilgax with Max's gun, stunning him for a moment, jumping out of the ship, leaving Vilgax to explode with a self-destruct sequence. And with that we have a review and recap of the entirety of Season 1. At the bottom we have Permanent Retirement, followed by A Small Problem, Tourist Trap, The Alliance, Side Effects, The Krakken, Last Laugh, Washington BC, Lucky Girl, and then there were 10, Hunted, Kevin 11, and number 1, Secrets. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. I had a genuinely great time watching back through Season 1. If you want a follow-up video of Season 2, please let me know. Thanks.